very esteemed panel of guests to talk a little bit about sustainable aviation fuel. I would like to initially invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves to the audience, introduce their organization to the audience, and then a little bit about the relevance to today's panel, and then from there we'll go into a very healthy discussion and debate about the developments that we see happening here in the space today. So we'll start to my left with yourself, please, Mohammed.
Thank you, Clay. My name is Mohammed Nafid. I'm representing Myra. My role at Myra is the Chief Executive Officer of NextChem Tech. Myra is an industrial group with two main pillars. The first pillar is called Technimont, which is a global leading EPC contractor, very well represented in various parts of the world. We have a very strong presence also in India. And the other part of the group is called NextChem, which is the technology licensing business of Myra Group, which develops technologies and commercializes technologies in various parts of the industries. We have four key areas of our business: nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon capture and utilization. We have fuels and chemicals, and the last one is sustainable polymers. In all these fields, we act as a pure play licensor, where we service clients with the technologies that are key in providing full-fledged solutions in the energy transition. Thank you so much.
And my name is Sami Jauhiainen. I'm responsible for the sustainable aviation fuel business of Neste. So Neste, not Nestle, is the Finland-based company. We are the largest producer of sustainable aviation fuel and renewable diesel in the world. We have a total production capacity of 5.5 million tons spread between our facilities and production sites in Singapore, Rotterdam, Finland, and California in the US. Sustainable aviation fuels is very much a key growth market for us. We've been involved in this space since the beginning, since 2011. We've supplied SAF to over 70 customers in around 25 countries. We have a capability to supply it directly to the airlines in selected airports like San Francisco, Los Angeles, London, Amsterdam, and Singapore, and then we work with multiple partners to make it available elsewhere as well. Our technology is based on Neste's own technology development. It's using oils and fats type of raw materials. But in addition to that, we are very much also focused on developing new pathways and expanding the pool of raw materials that can be used for SAF. And especially our focus is on lignocellulosic raw materials, forested residues in particular, as well as power to liquids. And one fact about Neste is that around a quarter of our global workforce is working in different roles in research and development, engineering, R&D to bring these new solutions to the market. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Deepak. I'm the founder and CEO of Visolis. We are a biotech company based in San Francisco Bay Area. We are a technology development company where we utilize specialized microbes and catalysts to produce hydrocarbons and help decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors like sustainable aviation fuels, materials, and high-performance polymers. Within SAF specifically, we are developing technologies which will enable a 100% SAF product in the marketplace while being feedstock agnostic.
Thank you very much. So I think, as you can hear from the introductions, we have a panel and a set of guests here that bring lots of different skills, experiences, and expertise across this ever-evolving market. And for the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to try and stimulate the conversation around three main areas. Something around the emergence and the role for regulation and for mandates, and how that has both helped to stimulate the existing market but will also drive forward future demand and future growth for the sector on the whole. We'll also then touch a little bit around the key role for, new, advanced and next generation feedstocks, as well as the technologies required, I think as Deepak was describing there, to kind of get us to those higher blends, higher rates, and provide an additional sort of set of technologies and tools that can really grow and advance the sector further. And then we'll touch a little bit on the key role of sustainability and how that can drive customers. Customers being both the airlines, but also everybody in the room who has been on a flight this week to get to Goa in many circumstances. So without further ado, and maybe we can start this question to yourself, Mohammed, on the initial front. What role do you see that governments and policymakers have in terms of supporting both the development of SAF, but also how they can change the perception for the customer basis and how they think about buying this product and approaching the market?
I think in particular, we're active in various parts of the energy transition, but in particular in SAF, I think the governments and the regulatory bodies have been very ambitious to come up with a regulatory framework that gives much more comfort and clarity to especially the investing community, to developers, to large operators, to make conscious decisions on where they want to grow their businesses. So we are seeing that in various of our conversations with developers and also in terms of the value chain, that we are now seeing also feedstock suppliers coming into the game and trying to get into the SAF production, driven by the long-term clarity that governmental institutions have given in terms of what they want to see happen in the aviation industry. So I think this is one of the biggest elements that we feel that the regulation have been given is a clear view on where they want to go, bringing clear mandates on the use of SAF in the aviation industry, creating therefore a strong demand, but also giving this on a long-term basis that allows people to start thinking about business cases and investments that will drive the deployment of new SAF production across the world.
Okay, thank you. So maybe on the more specific side, and maybe Deepak, we can start with you, and then I think Sami, this question would also be great to get some of your insights as well. What are the different types of regulatory frameworks? What are the different types of mandate schemes that we're seeing come to the market? They're actually, stimulating market behaviors across the value chain. And how can we kind of learn from best practices and, these types of activity sets around the world to really drive the continuation of the SAF space into the more emerging market and places like here in India? Maybe Deepak, we can start with you.
Sure. I think, as just to first what Mohammed said, right? Like, we already have a really good regulatory framework and a very ambitious target and goal along with it to back it up. So that is a good start. If we look at kind of drawing inspiration from where it has been done before successfully, we can look at wind and solar industries where there have been elements of renewable portfolio standards as the kind of the stick, and production tax credits as a carrot for the industry to help kind of develop the technology, deploy the technology. And deployment is absolutely crucial because with each new deployment comes learnings which accelerate the downward trends in costs of deploying newer technologies. So I think that's a critical element where we can learn from kind of the past practices in adjacent sectors. Second key element, I believe, is for any nascent industry, it's unclear and hard to predict which are the winning technologies when you are going from 1 to 5% versus 5 to 20%, from 20 to kind of 80 or 100% transition. And because of that, it's important to have support at multiple pilot and demo scale for technologies, because it won't be just one technology that will be deployed across the globe that will solve all of problems for SAF. We'll have a portfolio of technologies where different geographies might utilize different elements of those as we kind of work forward and work towards a transition where, for example, in Europe, we have the set up goals close to 70% SAF by 2050. 2050 seems pretty far from now, but it isn't. It's just a couple decades away, and it takes that amount of time to very aggressively deploy new technologies and bring down the cost curve. So again, in summary, it's been done before. If we look at kind of the track record for solar and wind over the last 25, 30 years, similar learnings could be applied here from a policy support perspective.
Sami?
Yeah, no, kind of like drawing the big picture, I think the main thing to highlight here is that what we are dealing with regulation is the green premium. It's the fact that the cost of producing sustainable aviation fuel is just more expensive than conventional fossil jet fuel. And maybe the difference to those wind and solar industries is that while those sectors have been able to drive this kind of a fast cost competitiveness, in the space of sustainable aviation fuels, this cost premium is likely to remain there. Even if technology is mature, we will over time need to take into use actually more complex processes to utilize all the raw material pool that is there. So SAF might be getting even more expensive on average over time. So we will need policies to deal with that. And I think what you were asking about was what's the role of different policies? And I think there are two main categories. There's more incentive type of policies, and then there are more mandate type of policies. And what we have seen over the past couple of years is that the first category, the incentives, it might take the form of tax breaks from governments, or bio-ticket opt-ins, or airports incentivizing SAF use with pools of funds that they have collected from NOx charges. They've been really important, and they've been really helpful in getting this market started and the first volumes of SAF getting used. But ultimately, this kind of policies that assume that the taxpayer, the general public will pay for the emissions of people who fly are probably not going to be sufficient to support this industry to truly scale up. Also, from the point of view of a SAF producer, it's very difficult to make a big investment decision in new capacity. Like, for example, Neste is investing at the moment 1.9 billion euros in Rotterdam to build SAF capacity. So ultimately, there needs to be something that gives more long-term confidence that the market and demand is there. And that's where the mandate type of policies kind of come in. Policies that create like a longer-term trajectory that the demands and market certainty is going to be there. So I think this is the avenue that is now starting to pick pace. European Union has set the example with the EU-wide SAF mandate, and we see that increasingly more globally other countries are following this avenue.
Thank you. And I think moving into maybe like the next section, which is, as we look out to the future, these mandates bringing more and more possibilities into the market. Maybe we can discuss a little bit now on the role of like new technologies and access to new and advanced feedstocks. So Sami, I think, while you're on the mic, would be great to kind of, hear some general views around the potential for, feedstocks for driving SAF globally.
Yeah.
Maybe touching a little bit on some of the constraints, but also how those constraints are emerging as opportunities in some markets as well.
Yeah. Well, maybe the first message to say regarding the feedstocks is that fundamentally, the raw material potential that aviation needs is there. There's potential for, according to several studies and also our own estimates, for hundreds of millions of tons of sustainable aviation fuel production just using biogenic raw materials. And then that is not capturing, for example, the potential in eSAF, power to liquids, where European Union has, for example, set the goal of delivering half of required SAF volumes by 2050. So the potential is there, but the main challenge is, of course, that to be able to capture and utilize all of this pool, we will need to use technologies that are not fully commercial today. We can get quite far with oils and fats type of raw materials, utilizing waste and residue oils and fats, or sustainably grown vegetable oils, intermediate crops, or degraded land-grown crops. Maybe those could deliver 200 million tons of raw material potential, which is quite significant, but it will not be sufficient alone. So we will need to scale up new kinds of technologies. And the challenge from policy point of view is that we need to drive those two things at the same time. So to fully maximize the potential of sustainable aviation fuels, we need to enable the accelerated scale up of what is available and commercial today, while at the same time give the incentives for investing in those future technologies that wouldn't be cost competitive in day one without some additional support.
And maybe this is a good time, Mohammed, from the way that you described the NextChem activities, what do you guys see and what are you guys focusing on in terms of those technology advancements? What technologies do you need to have available for the market to be mature when we start to get access to these feedstocks?
Just adding to the point of Sami. So what we're seeing, and this is very important, so the feedstock is there, but it's there not in one location. It's not there in the right quantities and qualities. So what we're seeing more and more is that it's important to have efficient technologies and also in some cases smaller scale technologies that allow you to go there where the feedstock is located and produce SAF decentralized. So and these can be modularized concepts that allows feedstock suppliers, aggregators, but also traders that would like to that are now, let's say, transporting feedstocks all over the world, are able to produce SAF there where they can find access to the right feedstocks. Another important technology that is becoming much more relevant nowadays is to having the right pretreatment technology to allow you to pre-treat higher free fatty acid feedstocks and highly contaminated feedstocks that can also drive the business case in a different way. So this is something that we see, having pre-treatment technologies plus having very efficient, smaller scale design plans that you can localize in the areas where the feedstocks is available is going to be an important driver in the next couple of years. And we're already seeing this in the various project development processes that we are involved in. Aside to that, and this is tapping into the point of Sami, we will have to extract the maximum value we see on the existing feedstocks, but there will be in due time also need for different type of processes, alcohol to jet, and actually what we see in Europe and the United States nowadays is the mobilization of gasification as a source of production of sustainable aviation fuel. So taking municipal solid waste and various biomass sources, converting that into syngas, and then further producing it down to sustainable aviation fuel. So we're seeing various technologies being developed and deployed in various stages of the life cycle. Obviously, SAF is where Europe wants to go. This is an area that is very much pushed for, but obviously the cost economics are not yet supporting that in the current technology development cycle that we see today.
Thank you. And I think while remaining on the technology, I think maybe Deepak, this is a good area to probe you on like the what's next, right? Because like listening to your introduction around Visolis, tell us a bit more about the role for synthetic biology and these new, chemically oriented processes for, advancing the sector.
Sure. Let me go a bit poetic here. Apologies, bear with it. Life originated on Earth about 3 billion years ago, right? And at that time, life had to figure out how to live in that atmosphere, which was predominantly CO2, methane, hydrogen, the kind of molecules we think about today and work with. And biology has figured out different mechanisms of transforming these multitude of feedstocks and transforming it into pretty much life, right? The molecules we utilize, our bodies utilize for growth and living. at Visolis, we take those learnings of how do you do those chemistries inside a living microbe and channel it towards specific building blocks which help you decarbonize areas like SAF. For instance, we have developed a technology where you can take pretty much any kind of raw material, be it first generation sugars or second generation biomass, woody biomass, or even gases, waste gases like CO, CO2, hydrogen, feed it to microbes to make intermediate chemicals, which can be transformed into products which enable 100% SAF, right? These are technologies which are all around us. They've not been deployed in an industrial setting. And what has happened over the last 20 years is we have made incredible advances in synthetic biology, our ability to engineer biology itself and put it into industrial scale. We have seen that happen already with first generation alcohol here in India, across in US and Europe, with massive deployments happening with the right policy framework, where the technology was already there to make alcohol. Similar technologies will emerge which will help you make other molecules which are even superior as starting points for making a 100% SAF product or even materials beyond that.
Thank you. So thinking about maybe the next part around one of the common linkages between all of this is sustainability. It's carbon intensity, it's the focus on the measurement and the proving of the benefit of switching to these fuels. So maybe Sami, it may be good to hear from your perspective, the role that sustainability has to play here in both feedstock development, the types of technology, the verification processes, Tell us more about how that's going to really impact the sector as we move away from the conventional SAF production methods.
Yeah, no, sustainability is key here, and of course, sustainability criteria or standards that kind of defines what sustainable aviation fuel is. Because chemically, we are just talking about a drop-in product, which can be used just as a jet fuel, but really the sustainability standards define what constitutes SAF. Clearly an important thing here is credibility of those standards. They need to, of course, provide the protection that sustainable aviation fuel actually delivers those kind of emission reductions that SAF is set out to be, considering, of course, different land use change effects, for example. So that is very important. But at the same time, another important consideration is, of course, that to enable those required investments in sustainable aviation fuel production capacity, those standards need to be also giving broad enough perimeter of what is enabled to be able to support the investment cases in SAF production capacity, which is going to be billions of euros or down the road tens of or hundreds of billions of euros or dollars. So those things are very important. Another thing that is very important in the aviation space is that this is a truly global market where airlines and airports are in competition between each other. So ultimately, we would benefit greatly in this market if these sustainability rules and standards are not defined separately in each of the countries, but then they need to be ultimately, they are more aligned and there's more comparability between the different countries on the sustainability performance and requirements. So from this point of view, for example, I'd highlight the importance of ICAO and ICAO's CORSIA sustainability standards going forward in the future, establishing at least one framework that constitutes global rules of what sustainability is. Clearly, beyond the rules, there needs to be practices and processes, certifications relative to those sustainability standards that provide the credibility of the products and meeting those requirements. But I think in this space, there is a long track record already in place for sustainable aviation, sustainable fuels, and practices that we can build on. So that's not an area where we need to start from scratch.
Okay, so we beyond sustainability, we start to think about global collaborations. Maybe Mohammed, it'd be good to hear a little bit from you about, what are the type of partnerships that you're seeing emerging in projects and structures, between EPCs, technology companies, and even the airlines in some circumstances?
Yes. And this is, I think, also driven by the very clear regulatory frameworks that we are seeing in Europe and the United States. It's activating various parts of the value chain now more than, let's say, the traditional oil and gas companies that we have seen in the past. So we are seeing now the feedstock suppliers and aggregators being much more active in the project development process, being part of the investment and also trying to be part of the sustainable aviation fuel industry. So this is something that we see in various projects where we have consortia between the feedstock suppliers, where we have also airline fuel suppliers being part of the consortium, where the technology provider is part of the consortium. So we see these kind of consortium building up where, and this is, I think, a very powerful way to develop business cases and also go through the project development process in a faster way, is to have several key building blocks of the project involved in the development itself. So from the feedstock all the way down to the final customers. In some cases, we have even the airlines being part of the discussion or their fuel providers, of course. But having a mix of all these players allows us to, let's say, develop our processes quicker, because every party brings part of the puzzle, but also mitigates part of the risk. And this is something that we are seeing more and more across the world.
Thank you very much. So, as we start to approach the end of this panel, I think what would be great to hear from each of you, and maybe Deepak, will start with you and then come down back towards myself. A few key points and reflections on, what is the opportunity here in India based on everything that we've been discussing and talking about, and how will that impact the global advancements of the SAF sector?
Sure. I think if we look at India, and I believe comments have been made earlier at this event itself, the amount of sheer raw material available is massive. If we look at agri-residues, if we look at municipal waste, that is a massive resource which provides India a unique position to not just develop a domestic SAF industry, but also play a critical role in helping decarbonize aviation globally. I think that's one of the key elements I would say. The challenges which I believe everyone appreciates here is around three broad buckets, right? One is feedstock itself, so aggregation of feedstock and having policy support for incentivizing that. And I always think of the carrot and stick model. So you create incentives for doing it, and if people are not doing it, then they get punished, right? That's been the approach of policy more or less, and you need both of those structures to enable every element of the supply chain. So feedstock is one. Technologies, again, as Mohammed mentioned and Sami mentioned, these are more complex feedstocks, which will require bigger investments, might have more expensive initial price points, but might also come down dramatically over time. And the reason I say that is if you look at kind of the state of waste management, for example, in a place like Europe or America, people pay tipping fees, i.e. the feedstock cost is potentially negative on paper, right? So there are opportunities to enable the supply chain in a way that will drive towards lower cost SAF over time. But that's over time, not at day one. So having the right frameworks to support the policies, support to have technology develop and deploy and come down the cost curve is, I think, super critical. So that's I think, how I would position it.
Thank you. Yeah. Sami?
Yeah, I think there's three things to highlight what needs to be done. I think the first thing is that we kind of need to learn to walk before to run. So we still have a lot of work to be done in growing the awareness of sustainable aviation fuels as a solution, showing that it is available, it is safe to use in the airports, getting the stakeholders on board, both the aviation industry, energy industry, public stakeholders. So building this kind of alignment of an awareness of SAF as a solution is the first step. Secondly, I think Deepak mentioned there is this vast raw material potential for India to be a global leader in this space, but ultimately to unlock that potential, we will need those policy frameworks that create this long-term demand and a market certainty. So policy comes before the investments. And then thirdly, what is going to be really important is this international collaboration, taking an active role in the global stage, building alignment on what those policy frameworks and sustainability standards need to be. And I think we are already seeing India playing a big role here, being a founding member of the Global Biofuel Alliance. So continuing on that road and embracing the global and international collaboration, I think is in a third critical item.
Mohammed?
Thank you. So I have the risk of getting into repetition, but I'll try to avoid most of the points that were mentioned. Of course, I fully agree with my co-panel members that the regulatory framework and the international collaboration is key. And I think this unlocks also the potential of India, not having only feedstock availability to feedstocks, but also having the ability and the capability to become a major player in terms of exporting of sustainable aviation fuel in due time. So I think the challenge here is that step by step, we will have to support developers here with what we believe is very important, to have decentralized, smaller size production locations that will allow to unlock and valorize feedstocks where they are being produced, but essentially the capability that India has, like I'm seeing also in, for example, green ammonia, is to become a powerhouse in both producing sustainable aviation fuel for domestic needs as well as for certain international markets. So I think it's a very promising time for India to really get into the sustainable aviation fuel as part of the international community.
Incredible. So hopefully that was an enjoyable session, and I'd like to ask everybody in the audience to join me in thanking the panel for some incredible insights through that half an hour.